Okay, welcome everyone. My name's Mary Davis Fournier from ALA's Public Programs Office, and we're going to get started. I am pleased to introduce today's webinar, Implementing Community Change, Positive and Productive Partnerships. Here's a couple of notes about our virtual classroom today. Only our presenters have microphone access, but you're welcome to type your questions or comments in the chat box. Many of you have been using it already to tell us where you're from, and it looks like we got people from all over the country, which is awesome. To send a chat message, just move your cursor to the bottom of the Zoom window and click on chat. If you've got any technical issues at all, please use the Q&A window to communicate with the PPO technical staff. To send a message through the Q&A feature, move your cursor to the bottom of the Zoom window and click on Q&A. Please do not put technical questions in the chat window. They might be missed. It gets pretty busy in there, but we will respond to your technical questions via the Q&A window very quickly. Note, this session is going to be recorded, and if you'd like to review any information, you can do so via the archived version that we're going to send out to all later today. So before we get started with our content and our speakers, I'd like to make a few quick announcements. Hopefully, many of you are familiar with Programming Librarian, our website from the ALA Public Programs Office. We have a lot of program ideas and an online learning library full of free webinars like this one, program models from libraries of all types from all over the country, and many best practices downloadables. Please check it out. I'd also like to say that this webinar is presented by the ALA Public Program Office and the Office for Diversity, Literacy, and Outreach Services. We also have support from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, the generous funder of the Great Stories Club Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Initiative. So today's webinar really delves into the components of effective partnership that are necessary to lead community change. We've invited leaders from Zion, Illinois to share their experiences. And we thought that school library township partnership that theirs is one that can be replicated, as can the level of thoughtfulness and intention that these two leaders bring to their work together. Equally meaningful, replicable, and relevant today is the program their partnership centered on. Great Stories Club, Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation, a program for underserved young adults, and its goals of addressing the historic and contemporary effects of racism are particularly relevant today. This webinar is an opportunity to break down and learn about the components that can take a partnership from symbolic to deeply successful. With that, let me introduce our presenters. Deborah Althoff-Wills serves as Program Director for Great Stories Club Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation in her capacity as the Instructional Materials Center Coordinator at the Zion-Benton Township High School in Illinois. She also currently serves as the second vice president of the Illinois Association of Teachers of English and is working on a joint conference with IATE and the Association of Illinois School Library Educators. Her deep community engagement is also evidenced in her sponsorship of Healthy Youth, a drug prevention program at ZBTHS, and her service as a board member of the Zion-Benton Coalition for Healthy Communities. Deborah is joined today by Sherry L. Neal, who is the supervisor of Zion Township, Illinois. She is also the acting CEO and treasurer, overseeing a budget of nearly $1 million and a diverse and dynamic staff. She is also a public speaker and member of the National Speakers Association. Sherry loves to create sustainable networks and relationships to support her team in building community sustainability and addressing systemic issues throughout the community that affect Zion residents through access to resources and development of future community leaders. She is busy. So welcome, Deborah and Sherry. I'd like to turn the mic over to you now, Deborah, to get us started.
Thank you so much, Mary, and we are so excited to be here today and would like to thank everybody who's joining us, whether you're live or watching us later. taking the time out of your day, especially in June. Nice, beautiful summer day, I think most of you are having, and joining us here today to talk about what it means to have community change and how to have a productive partnership. So thanks for taking your time today. We'll try to move things along and make things happen today. So our agenda for today, the first thing we're going to do is talk about our community.
Right, and just give you a little bit of a framework about what the Zion-Benton community is like, and the coalition that we formed that allows us to do some of the work that we do.
And then we'll talk a little bit about aligning your library programs to the community goals and how that works, and how to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. Then we're going to move into building relationships with community leaders and some ins and outs of that to be able to help you be successful.
As well as some tips about communicating the scope and importance of library programs, and how to communicate that without overwhelming people.
Right, and then we'll go into an action plan. How do you do it? What do you do?
All right, so let's get started. It's a lot to do.
Here we
go.
We're
going to do this in an hour?
No problem.
All right, background information. A little bit about our community. We are located about an hour north of Chicago.
Mm-hmm. And an hour south of Milwaukee. So we're right in the middle, right on Lake Michigan.
Far north and east in Illinois as you can be.
Right.
And then our demographics. So this is from our high school district. We have 2 high schools. One is about 400 students. One's about 2,200 students. I'm at the larger campus. Mm-hmm. We have, this is our demographic background. So you can see it is a diverse community. Mm-hmm. About 60%, a little over 60% of our students at our high school are kids who are living in poverty.
Right, and the population of the Zion-Benton school district is about a little bit over 44,000, just to give you a perspective. I'm the Zion Township supervisor, so there's Zion Township and Benton Township, and in Zion Township alone, we have about 25,000 people, and our makeup is actually a third Latino, a third African American, and a third white. So and we have much higher poverty rates than what the high school district has, because the Benton Township has higher income levels.
Right. So that just kind of gives you a snapshot of our community.
Right.
And then the coalition that we're going to keep talking about, this is how Sherry and I met, how we kind of formed this relationship. But it is something that we want to give you some background on, because when we say the coalition, this is what we're talking about. You see, this is our logo, which you can see it's Beach Park, Winthrop Harbor, and Zion. All 3 communities come together. We have task forces in literacy, substance abuse prevention, community wellness, and our leadership academy. Mm-hmm. And our vision is really creating a community without barriers.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of just to kind of give you an outline. In this community, in this coalition, if you can go to the next slide, the people around the table, we meet once a month, and it's people from all of these different organizations. And I apologize if I missed anyone. We were really trying to do this and try to make certain that we didn't. But you can see it's a lot of different organizations all coming together for the common purpose of building a community without barriers. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you can get a lot of partnerships in one table by being at this kind of coalition.
Right. And this is one of the things that we're going to stress throughout. If you don't have a coalition, start one, right? And if there is one, how do you get involved with it, right? Because there's a lot of different groups that form, and we'll talk a little bit more later about how important it is to be at that table.
Absolutely. So as part of so that's sort of our history, our background, where we're at, where our mental space is when we came to this presentation. But really, our progress, our program that we talk about with the Great Stories Club began not just with the Great Stories Club, but actually began prior to that, okay? So we'll go to the next slide. The school district that I worked for, our school board was very cognizant of the fact that we must talk about equity. And I was very happy that people began to have these conversations. And they made a very big investment, and every single one of our staff members received a gift of a book, this book by Glenn Singleton, Courageous Conversations About Race. And we were asked to read it, and we were asked to participate in amazing dialogues and discussions, talking as educators about what we can do to increase equity in our school. And this is an ongoing, this is not a, well, one day we're going to do this kind of program for the school district. It has been something that has been sustained, and we're being encouraged constantly to be thinking about this in every policy and everything that we do. So of course, when this comes to my, in my purview, I had to say, okay, well, what can how does the library fit into these discussions about equity? What do we do? And really be thinking and conscientious about that as I was participating in that professional development. Meanwhile, in our community, next slide, please. Sherry.
Right. So through the Coalition for Healthy Communities, I submitted a grant to have dialogues on race last summer. And I was shocked when we got it, because I'm not very, my rate isn't very high on getting grants, but I put it in because I knew that was one of the things that we needed desperately in our community, was to start having conversations around race. And what we got the grant, and it was crazy. And then I pulled together the YWCA, as well as I reached out to an individual in our community that we'll talk about a little bit more later, Chris Kubik, and asked if he would get involved, because he is really good at opening up these kinds of different conversations and laughing at himself and being humble and just creating that environment. So we held these 5 dialogues on race, and the outcome of it was, even I have the text on my cell phone still, from the president of Black Lives Matter, that said by far these dialogues did more to heal racism in our community than anything in the last 20 years. And an example the other day that somebody gave me, she called and said, I just want to thank you again for those dialogues. She said, every time I hear it now, when we talk about how with the whole equity situation, that the difference between somebody that's white and black that opens up a bag of chips in a grocery store and walks with it, the different response to that. And she said that it hit her at such a deep level, that so just being willing to start having these conversations made a big difference in our community.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And as part of my work with the coalition, I knew that these were happening. And because of that, I was able to come and participate in these conversations too. And so as a school librarian, making certain that I'm hearing what the community was saying was really important to me. And it ended up transferring to a lot of different things. Right. So then we go to their next slide, which is, I get this notification from our professional organization that there's a grant for the Great Stories Club, and the title of the grant is Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Great Stories Club. And I thought, this is perfect timing, because while I knew that the library had to be involved in this equity initiative, 100%, this is the direction that my administrative team has pointed us in. I need to support it with everything I've got. I also was not trained in how to do this, to be honest. I mean, when I did my education 20 some odd years ago, to become a teacher, this was not something that was on people's radar necessarily. And that's being very honest and candid with you all. This is not something that people were talking about. And so therefore, it's just not something I knew what to do. I knew something had to be done, but what to do. And I thought, thank goodness the ALA was offering training, because to me, yes, this did come with books, which was great. We had free books and free teaching materials that were really well organized and well researched, and all of that comes with it. But it also came with training, and tell me what to do, please, and tell me how to do it with authenticity, with credibility, and with the idea that I was going to go into this with best practice. Being really able to embrace that, and to lay our program bare and say, what are we doing wrong and how do I fix it? Because was really important to me. So all of that comes by, and we say, okay, but in order as a school library to be eligible for this grant, I needed a partner. And because I was connected in the community with these other organizations, I knew that there was a summer work program that Sherry's in charge of. And I knew that she had students, they were my kids, who were going to be in her place, in her house, basically. They're coming to your house now. And I knew that they were going to be, for her, a captive audience, but I had to convince her she pays these kids to work over the summer. So I had to convince her that this would be on their paid time, that they would be paid. And I presented this to her as, this is what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to give you all the books, my time, I'll facilitate everything, but I need the kids. And she was willing to do that. So her summer work program has how many kids?
We have
total.
We have 35 kids, but 28 of them are actually on a crew. We have a mentor with 7 kids each, and so they spend the 6 weeks in the summer really working with them to address. We have 6 character traits that our community has embraced through the Coalition for Healthy Communities, and so they focus on those and use the work as the curriculum to learn the character traits that we've developed.
So then what did the program look like? So if we go to the next slide, you can kind of see we read 3 books with the summer work program kids. The kids also participated in a racial healing circle with Monica Halsip, who was absolutely phenomenal. And then we read these 3 books. We read Ms. Marvel, No Normal. We had some community members who came in with that. This is a book about a girl who wears the hijab who's transfers into Ms. Marvel, the superhero. And so we had some community members who came in and shared their own hijab story with our kids. And that was really powerful. It was teenagers too, sharing what their story with our other youth and being very open and honest about it. The next book that we read was March, book 1, talking about John Lewis and his story. And a lot of our kids didn't know it.
Right.
I mean, they just didn't know.
Right.
And
what was really cool about that was that we have a resident in our community that is a legend, and she actually had a college experience that helped John Lewis years and years ago. So we brought the kids to the nursing home, sat around, and she got to share her experience and wisdom, and it made her life, it made the kids' lives. We did a video later and on our summer work program, and one of the girls talked about the impact that the words that Sadie Watts shared with them made on her life. It was really powerful.
And the idea that this was not just something far away, but it was really local. Right. And so we did that, which was awesome. That was cool. And then we read The Hate U Give, which was amazing book by Angie Thomas. I'm sure you all know it. But it does involve, it's a book about a young man who is shot by the police. And when we were reading this book, we brought in our mayor and a city councilman. And we wanted our kids to share their stories with their elected officials, and to be able to speak truth to power and let them know what they're seeing in their own communities. And to give our mayor and our councilman a whole lot of credit, they said yes.
Right.
And they came in and they read with our kids.
Right.
So on the next slide, you'll kind of see that. You'll see the kids participating in the top left-hand corner. You can see to heavens there with a big smile on his face. Right. And that smile didn't go away, by the way, when he came back to school. He was all over. He was just fantastic all year. On the right-hand side, you see that's our mayor, and he's talking with Deja. And Deja and she was absolutely adamant about what this town needed, and he is taking notes. And he really did hear her, I think, and gave her a lot of credit. Bottom left-hand corner, you see on the left, you can see Billy McKinney, who is our councilman, but he is now the new mayor of the city. And he's obviously having a good time with the kids. And he was so impacted by the discussions in the book that when he went to the movies and he saw that The Hate U Give was going to become a movie, he decided to take it upon himself to ensure that our entire freshman class went to go see The Hate U Give. And to give my superintendent a whole lot of credit, she said, okay, but I'm going to see the movie first. And she did. Okay. She read the book. She saw the movie. She talked to community organizers, and she made certain that this was something the community was behind. She really did her homework. And she said, okay, yes, we'll take the freshman class, and I'll make certain to pay for the buses. And so, and Mayor McKinney helped us pay for any student who could not afford the fee, the $6 fee to go to the movies, because we don't have a movie theater in our town. So we had to bus them and everything else. He helped us pay for that. And within minutes of me sending an email saying we were doing this, I had staff members saying, would you need any more money? I'll sponsor a kid. So we had literally no pushback, and everyone was all in chaperoning. Our English department, our social studies department really came together, and they created lessons before and after the event. It was phenomenal. And then on the right-hand side, you see Jada, and she had her opinions too about what was going on and what people needed to know. And in the background there, you see Chris Kubik, who came in and said, "Hey, I know you're going to do this book discussion. Would you mind if I help facilitate that discussion?" And I was like, absolutely not. I wouldn't mind. I'd love it.
Right.
You're the one who's better skilled at this kind of communication in terms of doing these dialogues about community discussions on race. Of course, you can facilitate this with me. So that's kind of our story. And photography by Sally Ryan. Thank you, Sally. She came out and took some amazing photos of our kids.
Next slide.
So how do you do this? How do you start? Right. And the first step is
yeah, it's really, and it's by being present. What I mean is, and what we mean is by being at the table. Deb Will has always been at the table for every meeting, and she listens for what the commonalities are that go on and how she can support. She has shown up at so many different events that she didn't need to be. We started a 5K run, and she was there, and I just found out when we were going through the practice that she's now running because of that. I had no idea the impact that you can make on other people's lives. But it's really important. If you want to move to the next slide, and listening to what is important to other organizations, community groups, school leaders, to align the library goals, instead of what we tend to do is like, this is what we're focusing on and this is what we're doing. Instead, what the school district did and what our local library, Zion-Benton Township Library does, or Zion-Benton Public Library does in our community, is everybody listens for how we can make the greatest impact, and then how our missions can line up to be able to work together.
Absolutely. And then, so then the next slide also goes into the same kind of vein, is that nothing happens without the library. And for this, I'm going to give a shout out to Illinois State Library. Has a synergy program where they bring together library leaders, and I was fortunate enough to be to participate in that. And there was a mentor there named Richard Kong, who's the director of the Skokie Public Library. And one of the things that he said, and it just resonated with me, is nothing happens without the library. Just remember to be involved with that. And I thought, he's got it right. I mean, he's putting into words what I was trying to put into action, and really he succinctly helped me with that. And then the other thing here, and this is in our list of references, is that the idea that if you don't show up, people who are negative will, and they hate everything. Okay, and I get that from they hate everything. This is from Jason Roberts. Has a amazing video called "How to Build a Better Block." And when I hear him talk, I just want to follow him and go build a better block. But when he says, people will show up who hate everything, and they're going to show up. So you have to be the person who shows up, who doesn't hate everything, who's ready to go and ready to be on board with a fabulous plan. Okay. But then the next thing is very important too, is you got to look at the big picture. And this is where Sherry, I'm going to set her up for this, because you see, Sherry, I'm a school librarian. Sherry is in charge of entire township. I have a small budget. Sherry is in charge of millions of dollars and a huge staff. Some staff. So here's the thing. When she walks in the door in a situation, in a regular organizational situation, she would really have no reason to have a conversation with me, the school librarian. But she takes this part really seriously. Well,
it is really serious to me, because as the township supervisor, I take the human infrastructure of our community as my obligation to be able to try and find ways to make it the best that it can be. And I know, right, that the individuals that work at the library, they know that the community members in a wholly different way than I do. And so, along with having those kinds of partnerships in our summer work program, we actually have kids that are staffed at our library, so that we can continue to build those partnerships and be able to work together to make our community the best it can be.
So, and that's also when we go into the next part, which is to have respectful conversations. So there are going to be times when you don't agree with everybody, and when you have to say no, and you have to say, hold your ground and say, no, that's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, having a hard conversation is better than just saying, never, we cannot possibly work together, we can't possibly do anything together, but having those really hard conversations. So we had to have a hard conversation in the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Project, okay?
Yeah.
And I'll let Sherry explain what the conversation had to start, how it had to start.
Well, first, just to share that before this even came up, there had been a very high community profile issue that Deb and I were on opposite sides with, and we did not work together for over a year. And then we came together because we realized it was hurting the community not to work together. And we resolved our differences, and we got back aligned on the same team. But when I read the book, The Hate U Give, I have to share with you, I read it over a weekend and I could not stop crying. And so I came into work on Monday morning, and I talked to my summer work program manager, and I talked to one of the mentors, and we all agreed that I couldn't let these kids read this book. They're 14 and 15 years old, and this is an R-rated book. And, you know, as I shared over and over again, that there's more F-bombs on those pages than there are the word and the put together. And I'm an elected official in my community, and I just pictured myself being fried for letting these kids read this book, actually making it part of our program. And so I contacted Deb and said, Deb, I'm sorry, but I can't move forward with this. I can't do it.
Mm-hmm. And so instead of and this is where that whole listen to be understand rather than listening to respond comes in, because instead of just saying, well, this is censorship and no, you know, instead of doing that, okay, when I hear Sherry talking about this, the first thing I've got to do is respond to her direct need, which is, no, you're not on this alone. Like, as an elected official, she is responsible for this. And I get that. And I have to understand that. And at the same time, I could have said, hey, you signed a memorandum of understanding. We've had this money for months, you know. Instead, take a step back and said, okay, well, let's talk about this. I see your concerns, right? I see the fact that you're worried about, as an elected official, what this is going to do. And I want to tell you that you have the backing of a national organization. You have professional training on your side. You are not alone. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to hang you out to dry because you let these kids read this book. That's number one. You're not alone. Number two, your kids are already talking about these things, right?
Well, and that was the thing that when she said, so how do you want to play this out, right? If you really care about your kids, do you want them reading this book and watching this movie on their own and having their own conversations about it? Or do you want to do it in a structured situation where you can have some of their greatest mentors in on the dialogue with them so that they can process it in a new way? And that was when I knew that it was worth the fight. And so I went back to my team and said, I get that, and I agree with you, and yet this is important enough that I'm willing to put my entire reputation on the line to see if it can happen. Scared to death. And yet I was scared to death. And yet I knew that it mattered so much that we continue these conversations in this community and get to the heart of what was breaking our society.
And I think that did show a huge level of trust, a huge level of trust. And at the same time, it was something that I was adamant that it was going to be okay.
Right.
Like, I knew it was going to be okay.
She held that
like
space.
I really did know it was going to be all right, because I did know that what we had was a community that does understand the idea that we need to talk about different experiences, and we need to have these conversations, and our kids were ready. And that was one of the biggest concerns, was that the kids weren't mature enough for the book. And I said, no, your kids are going to be just fine. Trust me, I've got this. You know, I work with them every day, and the kids are going to respond just fine. And they did.
Right. And the ripple effect from that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not only was it not negative, it was so incredibly positive. Mm-hmm. And just very grateful that it worked out that way.
But we were also bringing in, you know, the mayor. We weren't hiding anything.
Right.
Like this was not a under the, you know, this was not a,
Yeah, we met with the deputy police chief. We gave him a book, asked him to read it.
I met with the county sheriff. I talked to him about it.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. We 100% were open with this communication and saying why we wanted people to read this book and why it was so important for our kids to read it. So that we front loaded that quite a bit.
Really did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next step, so we're going to have those respectful conversations. Okay. Is when things get difficult, but how do you know what is worth fighting for? Okay. Like what are you going to go after? So we're going to go to the next slide. Okay. And this is where you really have to be a good student and study your community. Okay. What is everybody talking about? Wherever you go, everybody's talking about whatever, and that's going to differ wherever you're at.
Right.
Okay. I come from a small farming community. We're going to talk about different things than we are in this particular area. That's just life. Okay. What is no one talking about, but everybody knows?
That's one of the things that I'm really grateful in our community, that we're willing to have courageous conversations, right? I mean, as a community, we're willing to go there, and it's not comfortable, but you know, when there's something that like nobody is talking about, that not everybody, right? There's a small group, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, right? That is willing to have the courage, right, to step out and begin to have these partnerships and dialogues.
Yeah, and then. And that's where our discussions about race really came into as well. Like no one wanted to talk about that, but everybody knew that the community leaders, for example, around the table at the coalition, it used to be that there were no people of color in the room. Okay. We decided that needed to change. Okay. And decided to institute the Zion-Benton Leadership Academy as part of that, where people said, hey, let's talk about this. How do we lift people into and connect people into situations of power and leadership? Okay.
Right. And that was another partnership that I was really proud of. The then director of the library, Nan Blaine Hilliard, who many of you I'm sure have met in your travels. She and I got together and submitted a grant to start the Zion-Benton Leadership Academy to raise up more diverse leadership. And we now have 71 graduates. Our city council is now 2 of our ZBLA graduates are on the city council, and they're both African American, and not only they're the right people, right? They're incredible leaders in our community. Billy McKinney is now our mayor. At the library board, the community has changed so significantly from that partnership and working together in collaboration.
Absolutely. And then you want to look at those, and that same thing, like who is at every meeting, who seems to be getting the work done, okay? And for me, when I became a librarian, one of the things that I started to do is look around the room and like find the person that I was like, wow, that person knows what they're talking about. I need to go make friends with them. Okay. And like, be like, let's go to coffee. Oh, I see you're into running. I'll run with you, you know, I can't run. Okay. But whatever it takes to do, I say like, not again, we don't want to stalk people. Although
I have been known to stalk people.
Not really,
Right.
Not really.
Just Chris Kubik, but you know why, right?
But one of the things that we want to do is make certain that we are just continually being inviting. And sometimes for me, I am an introvert, which is like, some people don't believe that because I have trained myself to live in an extroverted world, but it can be difficult, but it's okay. Find the person who's loudest and proudest in the room and be like, okay, it's time to be friends. Okay, let's go to coffee.
Right. And coffee is crucial. Just so you know, I think we have gotten more done in our local coffee shop because you can build relationship first and then get to business. And I think that makes all the difference in the world. When you can put relationship before your agenda and build those synergies, then when you get to doing the work, it's a whole different ballgame.
Absolutely. All right. So then, and that kind of takes us into that, as you're building those relationships, it's important, let's go to the next slide, to know when to step up and step back, okay? So like, there are times when I know what my skill set is, okay? And I know what I got going on, but there are other times when, like, for example, when Chris Kubik asked, hey, can I come in on this discussion about the hate you give? I knew his skill set was higher than mine in this particular context. I knew it was. And so it was totally okay with me to say, absolutely. How would you like to do that? Absolutely. Let's, you don't have to lead every project. You don't have to be at the center of everything in order to be involved in something. In fact, most of the time, if you step back a little, other people step up, that's when a real partnership happens. And so, you know, I have a friend, his name's Cal Schneider. He used to tell me, he's like, if you're leading, if you're walking and no one's following you, you're just going on a walk. You're not leading. Okay.
Right,
you got to make certain that everybody is together in this.
Yes, absolutely. And the other piece to it is making sure you have the right people together. It's really important, at least where I've been the most successful, is when I focus on yes people, right? Who are the people that say yes, although, right? It's instead of no, because the yes, although people are willing to take a step forward cautiously and address the situations. The people that say no because, they shut the door on it. Now, I always make sure that I have a confidant that's a no person that I can go to that will show me where all the holes are, right? So that I can see what could be coming up against me. But at the table on a team, we want to be able to row together and continue to stay focused on moving forward with that. So putting the right people together, as well as like, who are the people that have the same mission towards what we're doing? You know, each of us have our own individual mission. Mine is human services. The library is literacy. You know, the park district is recreation. So how can we like create opportunities where all of them come together and we all get to do our own mission and do this work together? And I think that's like one of the key opportunities, because then, you know, if I'm doing something that's only in your mission, then I'm not doing my job.
Yeah.
And that's not okay. But
Right.
when it's my job and it's your job, then we have a bigger team, and we can knock things out of the park that most people can't do because they don't have that team to do it.
Absolutely. So yeah, so let's go on to the next slide then, because this is what we're talking about with that whole, like, yeah, we're going to build a common mission. We're going to be together. So we're going to build those relationships with community leaders in order to make the missions happen for everybody.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's go on to the next slide.
Right.
So our fathers, we found out in doing this presentation, both of our dads had the same saying, okay? And it was, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem, okay? So you got to be part of the solution, okay? That's just the way it is, all right? And so that's it. And the top left-hand corner, you can see that's a part of our Coalition for Healthy Communities. For 10 years, we brought in $100,000 a year in coordination with the Lake County Health Department through a Drug-Free Communities grant. So $100,000 for 10 years, over $1 million in substance abuse prevention funding into our community. That was huge, okay? The programs, though, that grant funded, they're still happening today. We have not let them die even without the grant funding. And that is not usual. I'm being told, how did you do that? Well, because we had a commitment to that mission, okay? The second thing, the second picture on the top and the top middle, that's a safety breakfast. We do this once a year at our high school. We bring in all the local first responders, firefighters, EMTs, police officers, and our kids have breakfast with them. And this is where we started that relationship building years before we were reading The Hate U Give, okay? We started building that relationship with people so that when we said, this is what we're going to do, people did trust us, that we were not, this was not with animosity or with any kind of thing, except to bring our community together to have the conversations that needed to be had. Top right-hand corner, and the bottom right hand, that's our community of character walk, where our local police really spearhead this community of character walk. And it's all these local organizations that come together in order to highlight the good things that are happening in the Zion-Benton community. And in the top right, that's me with my daughter. She even came and helped me set up our table. But every extracurricular in a school said, hey, would you like to have a table? And I was one of the few people that took our police officers up on that. And our superintendent is in that photo as well. And you know, it was noticed that I was there. Then the bottom, as Sherry alluded to earlier, we run the streets, DV Run. This was, Sherry came to me and said, let's do a community run. And I was like, sure, a 5K. And I'm like, A, I've never even been to a 5K. B, I've never even run a mile in my life. So because of this, I was like, well, I have to do good research. So I went out and I did a bunch of research about how to run a good 5K and how to organize one. And then I went and ran the 5K. Okay, I ran the 5K and started running, and yes, and now I have done 2 half marathons.
I had no idea. Right?
And so now, because of that, so these are the kinds of things that bring people together. And so I think, you know, being part of the solution, whatever the problem is, you need to be part of the solution.
Right.
Okay, so then we'll go to their next slide. And I think Sherry already talked about these yes people, you know, but you need to be their yes person. There's an email, sign up. You can help out a little bit, go ahead, okay? Because even if it's not library related, it truly is, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And
just in saying that, right, when you do say yes for other people's stuff, when you call, they're so much more likely to say, oh, are you kidding, Deb? What can I do for you? And that's the relationship that Deb, working at a school library, has developed with so many community leaders, that when she calls and asks for something, which is rarely, everybody wants to be there to support her, because she's always there to support everybody else, not just her, but with kids from the school. And I mean, it's really powerful to have a Deb Will in your community that wants to help in any way she can.
Thank you. And so, yeah, so when I was talking to my students, we'll go to the next slide. When I was talking to my students about this, okay, that's all right. That's right. So the whole idea of knowing your worth, okay? This is important. Everybody brings a skill set to a group, everybody. I do an activity, and I did not put this book, I apologize, on the list of references, but it's Tom Jackson's Activities That Teach, and he's got another one, More Activities That Teach. And there's an activity called the downhill slide, and it talks about the stages of addiction, okay? And with the stages of addiction, one of the things that he has you do is you write down things that are 3 people that are most important to you. And kids can do that easily. 3 people, no problem. And then 3 things that are important to you, 3 material objects that are important to you. And again, they have no problem. Do. And then you ask them 3 personal attributes, 3 things that make you who you are, that are super important to you, that you're really good at. And they stop. And adults stop too, because the problem is that we all tend to believe what is the bad about ourselves. We hear it, we listen to it, we feel it deep in our soul. Nobody wants to talk about what's good about you, and because that seems like you're bragging, or you're not being humble. You're not, it's too much. But we all have gifts, and it's important to know what your gifts are and how you can share them, and to be honest with yourself about those gifts. It's okay to say, hey, you know what, I'm really good at computers. You know what, I'm really good at organization. I'm very good at, finding good people and having coffee with them. Whatever you are good at, own it, know it, believe it about yourself, and then use it to help other people.
Right, because that's what'll bring you joy, being at the table. If you end up doing things that don't bring you joy, then it ends up being just another project and another obligation. But when you can figure out what it is that you enjoy contributing, then it makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So next slide.
So next slide. There it is. So I was talking to my students about this whole idea of they're like, I'm like, look, if I can do this stuff, really anybody can do it, because really I'm just a school librarian. Really anybody can do this. I'm just a school librarian. And my students got really mad at me. And this girl, her name is Heidi, and she and these other amazing lovelies who were my student aides in the library, as well as in my drug prevention group, wrote me this poem. And they said, you need to stop saying that you're just anything. You're more than that. Don't diminish yourself like that. And so it was really beautiful when you think about it. The idea that we're not just anything. What we are is who we make ourselves to be. So right. I'm going to let Sherry take it.
And I just so appreciate the validation, because oftentimes we think we're doing something for somebody else and they end up, you get more out of it than they do. And in that situation, I think in everything that we do work, and especially with the kids in the community, it ends up being an incredible blessing to us too.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So yeah.
But then how do you
Yeah.
communicate this with your larger community? How do you put this in an elevator speech, if you will?
Mhm.
So the first step is that you can't afford to be humble, okay? You need to have your elevator speech ready at all times. I just did my fourth quarter report. I know circulation in print is up by 10%. I'm going to tell everybody that my print circulation is up by 10%, okay? Because if somebody tells me, oh, you don't need all these money for books, my circulation is up by 10% from last year. Have solid programs ready, outlined, ready to be presented. If someone comes to me and says, well, we happen to be doing this. What's going on, Deb? 30 seconds. And that's all I need sometimes. And somebody wants to join the club. If you don't promote your programs, no one else will. And one of my mentors, her name is Marky Uloth. This is what she taught me. And she said, you can't afford to be humble. You've got to brag.
But it's so awkward and so uncomfortable to do that, but it's so true.
It's so true. And to brag in such a way that it's about the program and not about yourself, I think is really important. Because I didn't say I increased circulation by 10%. I said circulation is up by 10%, right? My students are reading more than they've ever read before. This is fantastic, right? And then show the alignment to the community goals and programs. So I can say, our diverse, our book club centered around reading diverse texts is working. This is happening. Our kids are attending. It's amazing. And so that shows that alignment. Like, look what we did. We did this book club that came out of those community conversations about race, and it's working.
It's working.
So, all right. So when you're getting to this point where you know what you kind of want, then you've got to plan for that action. You got to figure out how are we going to make it happen, okay? And this is where Sherry's going to shine, because she makes things happen.
Right. That's that's probably going to be on my tombstone, that I made things happen. Right. Not that word things, but you know what I mean. But so if you want to move to the next slide, right, the key is to determine, what do you want? Right? We focus so much on what we don't want and the problems in the community, but when we can really harness what do we want, and the we is a bigger we than just me, right? What is it that we are trying to get? Then the key is really, in the next slide, right, is baby steps. Right? Because what happens when you take baby steps is one of three things, always, not sometimes, not most of the time, always, one of three things always happens when you're willing to dedicate your time to taking baby steps. And the first thing is, right, standard, you take one step forward. You make the phone call, you have the meeting, you apply for the grant, whatever it is, you just take one step forward. And that's what we all think is always just supposed to happen, right? You just, okay, we have this goal, and then we take one step forward, and then we get to the goal and we do the next thing. But the reason why projects don't usually succeed and why people don't do New Year's resolutions is because of the next slide, right? You take a step backward, and it blows up, right? What you thought was going to happen didn't happen. So you end up saying, see, forget it. We can't do it. It didn't work. Blah, blah, blah. We didn't think of that. Yep. Yeah. Oh my God. We tried it. It didn't work, right?
It can never happen again.
Right. And so here's the magic in your step backward, is when you're willing to take the step backward and turn it into a learning step backward. Right? When you're willing to embrace the lesson in what made it blow up, why did it put you off track, and stay really focused on what it is you want, that is when you can harness some incredible information and be able to help you to get over future hurdles or knock down future hurdles that you wouldn't have seen, right? One of the learning steps backward that I took was to have a no person that I can go to and bring up things to, because otherwise, if I don't have them as a confidant, they will try and stop me from what I'm doing, right? But if I've got them as a confidant, then even though they're against it, they won't be against it in public. They will just help me to push back, give me the pushback there. So really being willing and able to treat mistakes and blow-ups and confrontations and things that don't work out as just a learning step backward, to take a step back and regroup and, okay, so wait, what do we do next? It opens the door for the magic of the quantum leap. Quantum leaps, you don't know when they're going to happen, right? But when they do, it's the magic sauce that shows up in the equation. You get a grant that you didn't even ask for. You know, we're working on a Zion Together big event, and I had RE/MAX realtors that came together and said they're going to fund the whole thing. That was a quantum leap, because working with the kids at one of the high schools, we just took step after step after step. And when you're willing to take the baby steps, you never ever know when you're going to have a quantum leap. But there are always quantum leaps that help to make the project actually, you know, come to fruition.
Yeah, and those are those moments when when the city councilman goes to the movies, goes to see something else, sees a preview for The Hate You Give, and comes back and says, "Did you know there's a movie?" Right. Yeah, I did. We're gonna go. Right. Yeah. Okay.
And I'm gonna make it,
and I'm gonna help pay for it, and it's gonna happen.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, that's a quantum leap, right? Yeah. And then all of a sudden, we've got 500 kids going and talking about the book. We've got teachers on board and administrators on board, and we're having really good conversations centered around a very, very meaningful book. So that was for me, that was my quantum leap this year, was bringing that all together.
Incredible community impact.
So then again, let's keep it real. How do you get there? Because like, we have this coalition, we have these opportunities. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're a single librarian with no support staff in a school, in a rural school. Maybe that's your reality. So how are you going to get there? The first thing is to seek out funding, honestly. And it drives me absolutely insane when I'm in one of these things and someone says, there are grants out there, just out there. Like, right. Where's out there? Because if they were just out there, like in the ether, maybe I would have found one by now. I will say that there's a database called Grant Station that I do subscribe to, that I look for grants with. Professional publications, I'm going to just really shout out, like, read your publications every month and look for what the grant offerings are going to be. Now, pay attention when you get your emails, and set aside a little bit of time every single day to look at those professional emails. State agencies such as the Illinois State Library, for us it's the Illinois State Library, for yours it's going to have a different state library, but professional organizations. I sit on 2 different organizational boards who have grants available, and we can't find people to give the money to. So yeah. So, and I don't feel with authenticity that I can give me money. So, but I will say that different professional organizations have different requirements. So join them, be active in participating in those professional organizations, and apply for them. Because some people will say, well, you can't give it to me. I could never. Yeah, you can. Absolutely, you can. If they're not giving the money to anyone, they might as well give it to you. I mean, this might happen. Private and corporate foundations, Dollar General has a literacy grant, Target has field trip grants. There are lots of different, like both private organizations that you can get some funding from. LSTA, Library Services and Technology Act, federal money. Ours flows through our state library a lot of the time, but there are other federal grant, that is a federal grant program that is absolutely instrumental and has been instrumental for me many times. PTO and boosters. Be the teacher in the PTO, okay? If you're the teacher at the PTO, chances are your program just got funded, okay? Right. Because the other teachers, they went home, okay? Right. Okay, you stay for that meeting, okay? Banks, and they're required to spend community investment funds, okay? So those are some other things that you can do, okay? Some other things. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. You want to present this to the right people. It's got to align with their goals. Sure, I talked about those yes people. You want to align it to make certain that you're not talking apples to people who are interested in oranges. You just have to know which group, and that's through your careful study, okay? And then make the partnership beneficial and fun. It has to be a good time, okay? You have to be the nicest person in the room. Even when you don't want to be sometimes, but you have to be
very difficult.
Yeah, you really do. You have to say, you have to do this. And I want to make it really clear too, the people that get things done in a community are usually a small subset of people. And so you cannot complain about other people you're working with.
Right.
This is like the biggest thing I would say. Oh, keep your mouth shut. Talk to your spouse about it. Talk to your significant other about it. Talk with your dog about it.
Right.
But don't talk about people to other people. It's just, this is not good. I had a situation where a person basically told people he didn't think I was very smart. Well, the people he told he didn't think I was very smart happened to be people who the previous week I had saved a $40,000 grant for. Like that same group of people had come to me with a problem and said, we can't solve this. Can you? And I fixed it. And within a week they had a check for $40,000. Those people didn't think I was stupid.
Right.
Okay. And when he said I got a phone call. I got a series of phone calls saying, hey, this person does not have your best interest at heart. We've got your back. Okay. Yeah. And that was not good for that young man, you know, and I can't fix that. I can't fix that
right.
about him. Right. The only thing I can say is thank you to my friends. Right.
Well, and the other piece to it in working in relationship and working on projects is there's going to be times when it doesn't go your way. We had a situation where we tried to save our local ice rink and we raised a ton of money and we were really close to achieving that goal. And a town across, we're right at the Wisconsin border, and a city right next to us decided to build a facility that had 2 huge ice rinks. And so the park district voted down to save the ice rink. And I could have responded and been really angry and burned some bridges. But what I knew to be true was that relationship is everything. And I might not win this one, but because of the way I handled losing that situation, it built a relationship with the park district that when I desperately needed them for situations that were going on at the park at Zion Township, they were there and they supported me. So don't think about like the project, think about the relationship and how do you build the relationships. That's really key to any collaboration you're going to do, is it's all in the relationship.
Yeah. So I think we want to say too that, you know, you want to make certain you say thank you. And so we'll say thank you to all of you for coming today and for being part of this. We really appreciate your time, and hopefully there were a few tidbits that you found that were interesting.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Deborah and Sherry. We really appreciated that. We have very little time left for questions, but please do post your questions if you have them in the chat. And we have one awaiting us already for Deborah. What advice would you give to school librarians whose administration doesn't see this type of partnership or community role as the work of the school library?
Sure. I think that's where you that's where you start with the money, because one thing that every school administrator understands is money. And so when you get the grant, then you can say, well, oh, hey, well, I got the grant. It requires a community partner. And so I would start with that, because the one thing that they don't want you to do is take away from the you know, well, I've got this many classes per day, or this, you know, I've got to see these. And I don't let any of that go either. Okay. You can't say, well, I'm not going to see students because I've got to do this. No, sometimes I'm there a little bit later because this stuff has to happen on my own time. But if they can see you at the PTO meetings, because they're one of the few administrators who are there, they see you at the PTO, they see the parents all behind you 100%. They start seeing the community leaders talking about you. It will come together. You just do it a little quietly. Just do it quietly at first, and it'll come. It comes.
Great. Let's see. Samantha, do we have any other questions? If not, I have one that's coming through another channel.
We don't have any other questions at the moment.
Okay, well, this one may actually be for you, Samantha. Someone is asking how to get LEU certificate for this.
So if you email the public programs at ala.org address that's on your screen, we can send you a letter of attendance, but we don't give educational units for our webinars.
Okay, great. And then I think we have time for one more, and that is the question about, you know, really how to get yourself into a group that already exists, it's having a lot of impact. How, if you see that exists in your community, but you're not part of that group, how do you get to those people who say yes? To your point about people end up making change.
Well, and one of the things that what we realized is magic is when you're looking to meet somebody because you want to learn from them, everybody wants to be a mentor, right? And so if there's somebody at the table that you would like to know and you would like to learn from a little bit, reach out to them and ask them if they'd be willing to have coffee, and go with a lot of questions and share with them what's on your heart and ask if they could help you to get more connected. And you'd be amazed how eager people are to help people when they know what's on their heart.
Mm-hmm. And you can always, most of these meetings are public, and you can kind of figure out who is the, secretary, treasurer, president of an organization, and just say, I'm really interested in this. Would you be willing to talk to me a little bit about Rotary, or a little bit about Kiwanis, or a little bit about whatever that organization is, and maybe start to just have the conversation. Like, can you tell me a little bit more about your mission?
Right.
Interview
but there's one piece to this, especially we had a gal come in and she was really frustrated because she felt like she wasn't respected at the table. And what you always have to remember is it takes time, right? You have to show up for a while before people start to take you serious. So just keep showing up and be willing to be a part of the solution before you expect people to follow you.
Yeah. And sometimes do the grunt work that other people won't do. One time I had a group that they were trying to get somebody to deliver food baskets at Thanksgiving. And so my family delivered food baskets throughout the community, and that's what we did. And that paid off for years afterwards, because we got that food delivered, and the students were coming up to me going, I saw you in my neighborhood. You had the big baskets of food. And I said, yeah, actually I was there. So, yeah.
Great. Well, I think we are out of time, but a huge thank you to Deborah and Sherry for this presentation, and to all of you for joining us today. This webinar will be available for viewing on Programming Librarian within 24 hours. And I believe after you log off, you'll be receiving a survey you can respond to with feedback about the webinar, as well as a link within 24 hours to that webinar. They have a fantastic reference slide as well. You'll be able to access that via Programming Librarian. And thank you all. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks
Take
for
care.
the opportunity.
Bye-bye.